Right. Hello, Aries. Hopefully we're recording. Yes. I did shuffle your cards and lay them out, and unfortunately the video recording was bad and I've lost it. So I hope that you'll accept that I did lay these out after shuffling. I didn't want to shuffle them again because it's got such a strong narrative thread, this reading, and I'd really like to stick with it. So we're going to explain the card spread and the narrative that it composes, and as many of these sites explain, this is for entertainment purposes. The whole idea behind Mythic Tarot, which is the deck that I'm using, and also my approach to tarot, is that it supplies you with a narrative arc that you might not have anticipated, which you can then, that you might not have come up yourself when thinking about a particular scenario in your life. And that in thinking differently about your particular situation, it opens up new ways for you to approach any particular problem or issue in your world. That said, it is, once again, not, this isn't therapeutic advice. It's a narrative that may or may not resonate with you, and you can take it or leave it depending on how the reading comes out. I think this is a very good reading because we start with this is the Celtic cross spread, and I'm new to this, so I haven't quite got the full spread in view. So you have above you here the Ace of Cups, and below you have the Seven of Wands. Okay, but we're going to start off by looking at the position that you're in at the moment, and this is the Page of Cups represented by Narcissus, which is not to say that you are being narcissistic or are narcissistic. This page represents the beginnings of self-love and the emergence of a deeper awareness of oneself and one's value in the world. It's quite a fragile energy. It could represent you or a person after a period of difficulty, starting to feel grounded again, starting to explore their merits themselves, what they have to offer, what they've achieved in the world. And when I say achieved, I don't mean simply material achievements or outcomes. I mean in terms of loving relationships and interactions with others. The value that people bring to the world is so much more than financial. Okay, so it represents you in a position where you're possibly a little bit fragile, maybe after coming out of some difficulty. And crowning you is this Ace of Cups, which represents the matter that as it seems to you in superficial or earthly terms, worldly terms. And crossing you is the Devil card. Now, I don't want you to be overly concerned about that. The Devil represents our corporeal desires and attributes, and can suggest a tendency to lean too much in that direction at the expense of spiritual, relational, and other, values in life, other relationships, other contexts, other situations. So with the Ace of Cups and the Devil card crossing you, it suggests that something has occurred, an offer has presented itself, or the potential for something new has presented itself and caused you to reflect upon your value as a potential love partner or in a vocational context. I read this spread as relating to either or both because of the nature of the cards as they're given in this spread. So something's happened to trigger your reflection upon yourself in this way. And the trouble is that you're looking at yourself negatively because you're weighing yourself up and your merits by looking at superficial corporeal things, bodily things, perhaps financial achievements, wealth, how many Instagram followers you have, how many shoes you have in the cupboard, whatever. Or it may mean other kinds of human or physical kind of failings in terms of addiction. But in this context, it suggests less a matter of addiction and more a tendency to have your view of yourself, your weighing of yourself, and your developing self-awareness and feelings of self-love overshadowed by a false kind of measure, an attitude that weighs in too heavily on whether or not you're too fat, too thin, too pretty, too handsome, not handsome enough, to achieve the kind of thing that is on offer, represented here by the Ace of Cups. Now, at the base of the issue is something that you may not be consciously aware of, and that is represented by the Seven of Wands, which is emphasizing the competitive nature of life sometimes, or the context in which you're finding yourself, the situation you're finding yourself in, whether it's competition for a partner, for a love interest, or competition, as I suspect it refers to, out there in the world for your achieving your vocational aims. If you're a writer or an artist, it can be really difficult. If you're starting a new business, you become acutely aware of the competition and the dangers that are there. You know that you might fail utterly. They could wipe the deck with you. So these kind of underlying fears are there, triggering this kind of anxiety and inappropriate, excessive focus on values that are sort of weighted in the physical realm and not focusing on the good that you might bring to the world. Now, I read the card as I lay it out. This is the past influences and these are immediate future influences. So it suggests with temperance in the past that you were in a position where you were actually weighing things, balancing things out and thinking quite carefully about your situation, whether it was a romantic situation or vocational. And you weren't having your judgment clouded by an excessive focus on corporeal attributes and slavish desires to wealth or to addictions to things. You were actually thinking quite carefully in a way that suggests you were valuing yourself and valuing what you and others had and what you could bring to a new situation. The fact that the immediate future is shaped as represented by the Page of Pentacles suggests that if this is related to a love interest, then the Devil card in conjunction with the Page of Pentacles suggests that perhaps the offer or stirrings of love that have presented themselves to you for another or of another for you may be potentially crossing boundaries, that you may know a person in a particular context that, say for instance, a business or work context, where your relationship is establishing, perhaps it's fairly new, but it's fragile because of that. But it would be inappropriate of you to introduce a romantic expression of feeling in the particular context that you're in. If it's in relation to a vocational matter, it suggests that there's a future win coming through, but it's small. It's something that you have to manage carefully. If you're an artist or a writer, for instance, or a student, it might mean that you gain a small award that will help you on your path, on your journey, but it's not a huge sum of money. It's enough if you manage it carefully and if you think carefully and in a balanced way about how to manage it. The problem is that overshadowed by the Devil, the card as you are, your eyes are, you've got dollar signs in your eyes in this context, and the small amount of money that's going to be awarded to you may not, in a future context, may not feel like very much at all to you, and you may actually, although you'll be grateful for it, it's not necessarily going to help validate your emotional weighing of your merits and your worth in the world. So that's the situation as it's playing out. The crisis here, the situation is you find yourself in a position where you're weighing yourself and your merits in relation to the stirrings of something new and emotionally exciting, interesting, whether it's a new path vocationally or a new love interest, that must be handled carefully, either because it's a small sum of money for your vocational aims and not overflowing, your cup isn't overflowing, but it's enough to secure your future if you manage those resources carefully, or if it's a love relationship, the situation must still be managed carefully because there's the potential for crossing boundaries and unsettling a relationship out of context. If the relationship is formed in a business setting or in a context where neither you or the other person has explicitly come forward for intimacy, then you risk creating a problem. So the Seven of Wands suggests too that you're deeply aware of the nature of the situation, even if you're not overtly aware of it, even if at the moment you're focusing on the potential that is before you and which appears to be coming towards you as well. So on a deeper level, you are aware that it's a highly competitive situation that you find yourself in. Now, when we get, so that's the early stages of the situation and the crisis that you find, that, as I term it, in terms of a narrative, is a crisis stage. And where you are at the moment is that in your deep awareness, underlying awareness of the situation is highly competitive, you have been managing yourself. This might represent not simply competitive forces external to you, but your own stirrings of enthusiasm, your ambition, and the Chariot here in the position of where you are at the moment, where you find yourself right now, suggests that you need to really manage that ambition, that desire. The Wands are the suit that relate to vocational matters. So it does suggest that you're very much aware that you've got to keep tight hold on the reins and manage these incredibly energetic forces, emotions, ideas, motivations, directions, keeping things on track and together, because as you can see in this image, those two horses want to veer off in completely opposite directions, but it's only the chariot driver who is keeping them on their direct route. Now, the view that other people take of you, whether or not it's actual or your take on how the world might objectively view your situation, is that people see you weighing things up. They're aware that you have an important decision to make and that the decision that you make will affect you significantly in some way. The Lovers, obviously, because of the title, is typically associated with romantic decisions or with romantic coming together. In this suit, the Lovers represent simply a decision, and it's a difficult decision because it's the kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't decision, where every choice that you have before you, and here are three choices available, every choice that you have before you makes perfect sense on one level. You might choose any one of the choices that are before you, but each has its consequences, each has its opportunities, and it's a matter of weighing your choices and not necessarily thinking damned if you do, damned if you don't, but being very mindful and managing your resources and managing not just your resources, but your goals and ambitions, and thinking carefully about which choice most closely aligns to those. The next card we have ties in perfectly with the reading that I've given of the Page of Cups, because this is the Two of Wands. This is Jason of the Argonauts after he's just discovered his identity. And it's also typically represented by a figure watching and waiting for his ships to come in. So it's the stirrings, the beginnings of awareness of one's station in life, a sense of destiny, a sense of, we all in many ways would like to have a secret destiny of great renown and success waiting for us somewhere along the way, but we have to make our own destiny. And so this card, situated in the place where your hopes and fears are, suggests that it's related to the Page of Cups and your doubting of yourself, while at the same time hoping that your doubts are wrong and that you have what it takes to be whatever it is that you want to achieve, whatever goals that you have set yourself. So it does reflect upon this kind of, it's like the reverse side of the coin to the devil, which is casting doubts on your ability to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in light of the competitive struggle that is in every aspect of life, really. It's pretty hard to avoid it. So then we have the final outcome, and this outcome suggests, when read with the Page of Pentacles and the reading that I gave you earlier of the Page of Pentacles, it suggests that although you're going to have a positive outcome, it's a small win, not a huge win, and the struggle isn't over, but you get a bit of respite. You need to take a break, that this is perhaps a long haul game, and that if you feel disappointed because the financial benefits are not great, or disappointed because you had a romantic interest that you now have to rein yourself in on, in order to avoid crossing those boundaries that really shouldn't be crossed, in order to avoid overlaying perhaps a business relationship with a romantic aspiration. You need to take some time out to reflect upon it. So overall, this is a positive reading, because it kind of reminds me of that saying, you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need, which is the Rolling Stones song. It reminds me very much of that, because it suggests that you are going to get what you need. It's not going to be a huge win. It's going to be enough if you continue to do what you're already doing, which is holding yourself in check, keeping focused, managing, using all the strength that you have at your disposal to manage the deviations that your different ambitions, because it suggests, this court card suggests that this, not a court card, this card, I just slipped up on that. This card suggests, Major Arcana card suggests that you are managing some drives that are really quite potent and powerful, and trying to keep these two in check. So it is quite possible that this reading relates to both romantic and vocational interests at the same time, by indicating the possibility that there is a romantic interest in a business or vocational context, and you're very much aware of the potential for it to slip over and damage your situation either way, necessitating a bit of time out, moments for reflection and deeper consideration for what's at stake and what it is that your goals are. Okay, Aries, I hope you found that useful.